Welcome to the Whispering Cottage Tales channel. At the edge of the English countryside, where rolling hills meet ancient forests, and morning mist clings to the valleys like soft silk, there exists a village that time forgot to carry forward. Travelers who stumble upon it speak of it only in hushed tones, as if naming it too loudly might cause it to fade like a dream upon waking. They call it Willowmere, a village wrapped in perpetual twilight, where gaslight glows eternal, and every cobblestone whispers stories of rest. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, a weary traveler named Thomas found himself walking along a narrow country lane. His shoulders carried the weight of too many sleepless nights. His mind buzzed with thoughts that wouldn't settle. He had been walking for hours, seeking something he couldn't name, guided only by an inexplicable pull toward the unknown. The air grew cooler as he walked. Fallen leaves crunched softly beneath his boots. The scent of wood smoke and distant rain filled his lungs. Somewhere in the gathering dusk, a robin sang its evening song. Then, just as the last light began to fade, Thomas noticed something strange. The path beneath his feet had changed. What had been a rough dirt track now gleamed with smooth cobblestones. Gas lamps lined the way, their flames flickering behind frosted glass, casting pools of golden light that pushed back the darkness. Thomas stopped, turning slowly to look behind him. The countryside he'd been walking through had vanished, replaced by something else entirely. A village materialized before him, as if it had been waiting patiently for his arrival. Brick cottages with thatched roofs lined winding streets. Ivy climbed walls and gentle green cascades. Window boxes overflowed with late-blooming roses and trailing ivy. Every window glowed with warm amber light. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, carrying the scent of burning applewood and baking bread. Thomas stood at the village entrance, beneath an old stone archway covered in moss and climbing roses. A wooden sign swayed gently in the breeze, its painted letters faded but still legible. Welcome to Willowmere. All who are weary may find rest here. A soft sound reached his ears. Not quite music, not quite words. A gentle humming that seemed to come from the village itself, from the stones and the air and the golden light. It wrapped around him like a warm blanket, easing the tension from his shoulders. Thomas took a breath and stepped through the archway into Willowmere, entering a world built for rest. The moment his foot touched the village cobblestones, something shifted. The constant noise in his mind, the endless loop of worries and thoughts, began to quiet. The air here felt different, thicker somehow, softer, as if weighted with peace itself. He walked slowly down the main street, his footsteps echoing gently. On his left stood a tea shop, its bow window filled with copper kettles and delicate china cups. Through the steamed glass, he could see patrons sitting in comfortable chairs, sipping from steaming cups, their faces serene and untroubled. Next to it, a bookshop spilled golden light across the cobblestones. Leather-bound volumes were stacked in the windows, their spines catching the gaslight. A small sign in elegant script read, Thornley and Sons, Booksellers. Since 1842. Come in, browse slowly, stay as long as you wish. Across the street, a watchmaker's shop ticked peacefully. Through the window, Thomas could see hundreds of clocks on the walls, but instead of the frantic ticking he expected, they produced a gentle rhythm, like a heartbeat, slow and steady and soothing. They produced a gentle rhythm, like a heartbeat, slow and steady and soothing. Everything in Willowmere moved at its own unhurried pace, a baker carried fresh loaves from his oven, each movement deliberate and calm. A lamplighter made his rounds with a long brass pole, lighting lamps that were already lit. An ancient ritual performed for its own sake. An elderly woman swept her doorstep with slow, methodical strokes, as if she had all the time in the world. At the center of the village stood a small green, with a fountain at its heart. Water trickled softly over moss-covered stones, the sound as gentle as rain on leaves. Wooden benches surrounded the fountain, each one bearing a small brass plaque with simple inscriptions. Rest here, breathe deeply, all is well. Thomas found himself drawn to one of the benches. He sat down slowly and immediately felt as if the bench had been waiting specifically for him. It fit his body perfectly, supporting him in just the right places. The sound of the fountain filled his ears, washing away the last echoes of the busy world he'd left behind. Thomas looked up to find an elderly gentleman standing nearby, leaning on a brass-topped walking stick. He wore a perfectly tailored Victorian suit of deep burgundy velvet, with a gold watch chain glinting across his waistcoat. His white beard was neatly trimmed, and his eyes sparkled with warmth and knowing. "I'm Mr. Thornley," the gentleman said, settling onto the bench beside Thomas with a contented sigh. "Welcome to Willowmere, my dear fellow. You look as though you haven't slept properly in quite some time." Thomas opened his mouth to protest, then realized it was true. He couldn't remember the last time he'd truly rested. "That's what brings most travelers here," Mr. Thornley continued, his voice as soothing as warm honey. "The world out there, it moves too fast now. Telegraph wires carrying messages across continents in seconds. Trains thundering through the night. Electric lights burning away the darkness. It's all quite overwhelming for the human soul, which was designed for slower things. Firelight, starlight, the gentle rhythm of day turning to night." The old man gestured around the village. "Here in Willowmere, we keep to the old ways. We move at the pace of seasons, not seconds. We light our lamps with flame, not electricity. We travel by foot, not by machine. And everyone who comes here, everyone who truly needs us, finds that their sleep returns. Deep sleep, healing sleep, the kind of sleep that makes you feel whole again." A room where dreams come gently, Mr. Thornley rose from the bench, offering Thomas a kind smile. "You'll be wanting somewhere to stay the night, I expect. Come along. I know just the place." He led Thomas through winding streets, past more shops and cottages, each one more charming than the last. They passed a music shop where a violin played itself in the window, producing a melody so beautiful it brought tears to Thomas's eyes. They walked by a flower shop where roses bloomed despite the lateness of the season, filling the air with their sweet perfume. Finally, they stopped before a 3-story inn built of honey-colored stone. Climbing roses covered half the facade, their blooms white as fresh snow. A sign hung above the door, painted with elegant lettering, "The Drowsy Owl Inn, established 1838. Mrs. Weatherby runs this establishment," Mr. Thornley explained, pushing open the heavy oak door. "She's been caring for weary travelers since before I was born, and I'm older than I care to admit. You'll be in excellent hands." The interior of the inn wrapped around Thomas like an embrace. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, large enough to stand in. The walls were paneled in dark wood that gleamed in the firelight. Comfortable chairs and sofas were arranged in cozy groupings. Bookshelves lined every available wall, filled with leather-bound volumes. Behind a polished mahogany desk stood a woman of perhaps 70 years, with silver hair pinned in an elegant bun and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. She wore a deep green dress with a cameo brooch at her throat. "Ah, a new guest," she exclaimed warmly. "Welcome, welcome, dear traveler. I'm Mrs. Weatherby. Mr. Thornley, how kind of you to bring this poor dear to us. He looks absolutely exhausted. Haven't slept properly in ages, I'd wager," Mr. Thornley said with a knowing nod. "He needs one of your special rooms, Margaret." Of course. Mrs. Weatherby produced an old brass key from a drawer. "Room 7, I think. The one with the view of the willow tree. Perfect for a peaceful night's rest." She came around the desk and took Thomas's arm gently. "Come along, dear. Let's get you settled. Mr. Thornley, will you join us for supper later?" "Wouldn't miss it," the old gentleman replied, tipping his hat before departing. Mrs. Weatherby led Thomas up a staircase with worn carpet that muffled their footsteps. Oil paintings lined the walls, scenes of the English countryside in every season. At the top of the stairs, a long corridor stretched before them, lit by gas sconces that created pools of golden light. "This inn has been caring for travelers for over 50 years, Mrs. Weatherby said as they walked. "My grandmother started it, then my mother ran it, and now it's mine. Every room is designed with one purpose: to help you sleep. Really, truly sleep. The kind of sleep you remember from childhood, when you'd close your eyes and not open them again until morning, with no worries, no thoughts, just peaceful, gentle rest." She stopped before a door marked with the number 7 in polished brass. The key turned smoothly in the lock, and the door swung open to reveal a room that seemed pulled from a dream. A sanctuary of sleep. The room was not large, but it felt perfect. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, its dark wood posts carved with vines and flowers. The bed was piled high with quilts and coverlets in shades of cream and soft blue. Pillows in crisp white cases were arranged invitingly at the head. A fireplace stood against one wall, already lit, flames dancing over logs that crackled softly. 2 comfortable chairs sat before it, upholstered in worn velvet the color of autumn leaves. Between them, a small table held a silver tray with a teapot, cup, and a plate of shortbread biscuits. The window looked out over the village. Through the glass, Thomas could see the willow tree Mrs. Weatherby had mentioned, its long branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. Gaslight from the street below cast dancing shadows across its leaves. "The tea is chamomile with lavender," Mrs. Weatherby said, moving to the fireplace to adjust the logs. "Grown in my own garden. The biscuits were baked fresh this afternoon. There's a basin and fresh water on the washstand, and extra blankets in the wardrobe if you need them, though I don't think you will. The fire will keep you perfectly warm all night." She moved to the bed and turned down the covers, revealing sheets so white and crisp they seemed to glow. "I've put a hot brick wrapped in flannel at the foot of the bed to warm the sheets. By the time you're ready to sleep, they'll be perfectly toasty." Thomas found his voice at last. "How much do I owe you for all this?" Mrs. Weatherby waved her hand dismissively. "Willowmere doesn't work that way, dear. We're not here for profit. We're here because travelers like you need us. Rest well tonight. Sleep as long as you need. No one will disturb you. And in the morning, if you remember us, you're welcome to return whenever you need rest again." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Listen for the bells," she said softly. "The church bells ring every hour through the night. They're very old, those bells, and they have a special tone. Many of our guests say the sound of them ringing helps them drift off to sleep. Each bell stroke seems to carry away a worry, a thought, a care. By the time they finish ringing, there's nothing left but peace. With a final warm smile, she slipped from the room, closing the door softly behind her. The ritual of rest. Thomas stood in the center of the room, suddenly aware of how tired he truly was. The weariness he'd been carrying for so long seemed to settle over him like a heavy cloak. But here, in this room, it didn't feel burdensome. It felt like permission to finally rest. He moved to the window and looked out over Willowmere. The village glowed softly in the gathering night. Lights flickered in windows. Smoke drifted from chimneys. A cat crossed the street below, unhurried and serene. Everything moved at that same gentle, peaceful pace. Somewhere in the village, a clock began to chime. Others joined it, their tones blending into a chorus that echoed through the streets. Thomas counted. 9 bells. 9 o'clock. As each bell rang, he felt something release inside him. A knot of tension he didn't know he'd been carrying. A worry he'd held for so long, it had become part of him. Stroke by stroke, the bells carried them away. When the last chime faded, Thomas felt lighter than he had in years. He turned from the window and poured himself a cup of tea. The steam rose in lazy curls, carrying the scent of chamomile and lavender. He settled into one of the chairs by the fire and sipped slowly. The tea was perfect, not too hot, sweetened with just a touch of honey. The shortbread dissolved on his tongue, buttery and delicious. The fire crackled softly. Outside, a light rain began to fall, pattering gently against the window. Not a heavy rain, not a storm, just a soft, persistent whisper that seemed designed specifically to lull him towards sleep. Thomas finished his tea and set the cup aside. He stood and began to prepare for bed, moving slowly, savoring each small ritual. He washed his face in the basin, the water cool and refreshing. He changed into his nightclothes. He banked the fire carefully, arranging the logs so they would burn slowly through the night without dying completely. Finally, he turned to the bed. The hot brick had done its work perfectly. When he slipped between the sheets, they wrapped around him with delicious warmth. The mattress was firm, but not hard, supporting his body perfectly. The pillows cradled his head like gentle hands. He lay still, listening. The rain continued its soft percussion against the window. The fire whispered its ancient lullaby. Somewhere far away, a nightingale sang 3 notes, clear, and then the bells began again, then fell silent. 10 o'clock. Each stroke reverberated through the night air, through the stones of the village, through the very air in his room. With each bell, Thomas felt himself sinking deeper into the mattress, deeper into the pillows, deeper into a state of profound peace. By the time the 10th bell faded into silence, his eyelids were growing heavy. His breathing had slowed. The thoughts that usually raced through his mind at night were nowhere to be found. There was only this, the warmth of the bed, the sound of rain, the fading glow of the fire, and a sense of absolute, complete safety. Into the arms of sleep, Thomas's last conscious thought was wonder at how perfectly, impossibly comfortable he felt. And then he was drifting, floating, sinking into sleep the way a stone sinks into still water, smoothly, inevitably, completely. He slept without dreams, without movement, without waking. The kind of sleep that heals, that restores, that makes all things new. Around him, Willowmere kept its gentle watch. The gas lamps burned steadily. The willow tree swayed in the rain. The bells rang each hour. marking time without urgency, simply acknowledging the peaceful passage of night into deeper night. At midnight, Mrs. Weatherby made her rounds through the inn, checking that all her guests were comfortable, that all the fires were tended, that all was well. She paused outside room 7 and smiled, hearing the deep, steady breathing from within. Another traveler finding the rest they so desperately needed. The rain continued through the night, gentle and constant. In the morning, it would stop, and sunlight would break through the clouds, painting the village in shades of gold and green. Thomas would wake slowly, naturally, feeling more rested than he could remember feeling in years. But that was for morning. Now there was only night and rain and sleep, and the eternal peace of Willowmere, a village built solely for rest, existing in the space between waking and dreaming, ready always to welcome those who need it most. The bells rang on through the night. Each stroke carried away another care, another worry, another burden. And in room 7 of the Drowsy Owl Inn, Thomas slept on, wrapped in warmth and peace, held gently in the embrace of a village where time moved slowly, where rest was sacred, and where all who were weary could finally sleep. Sleep, dear traveler. Sleep deeply and well. Willowmere will keep you safe through the night. And when you wake, you will remember this place and know that whenever you need rest again, the village will be waiting, eternal and patient, at the edge of the world where the weary find their peace. All is well, all is peaceful, all is rest. Sleep now.